Okay, let's take a look at the next question. I'm going to read the question here, but I'm going to do the question on the next page. So we're going to share that screen. Find cosine s plus t given that sine s equals 3/5, cosine t equals -12/13 with both s and t are in quadrant 2. Okay, so what we're being asked to do is the following. I'm going to fold this so we can kind of not be bothered by the others. So I want to find cosine of s plus t. Well, if I look up here, the cosine of a product, cosine of a plus b, cosine a, cosine b minus sine a, sine b. Let's go to a dark one so you can see this. So this is going to be cosine of s, cosine of t, minus sine of s, sine of t. Well, now let's take a look again and see what they gave us. Do that. Okay. Let's take a look again and see what they gave us. They're telling us that sine s is 3/5. They're telling us that cosine t is -12/13. So they're telling us that sine of s, this guy right here, this one is 3/5. They're telling us that cosine of t is -12/13. Okay, so now what we need to do is, if you notice, there's two values we don't have. We need cosine s, we need sine t. So now what I want to do is I want to talk to you about how we get those. And it involves us using one of our identities. It involves us using this identity, sine squared x plus cosine squared x equals 1. This Pythagorean identity is what we're going to use. So what we're going to use is this. In order to solve this, I'm going to say sine squared of s plus cosine squared of s equals 1. So if we look at it, we know what sine of s is. Sine of s is 3/5. So the way I want to kind of start this, just kind of follow along. Imagine I gave you a problem that looked like this. Let's say I had a problem that said 4 plus x squared equals 13. If you were asked to solve this back in your algebra days, you would subtract 4 from each side. And this would give me x squared equals 13 minus 4. And you would know that because of arithmetic, 13 minus 4 is 9. So x squared equals 9. To solve anything squared, we take the square root of the left, we take the square root of the right. This gives me an x, and the answer here is plus or minus 3. Well, we're going to follow that same logic when we're going to do it with sines, because I'm going to tell you, the idea of sine s being 3/5, sine s equals 3/5, that is no different than me saying x equals 3/5. It's a variable equals a number. So what's going to happen is I'm going to plug in 3/5 here, it's squared, plus cosine squared s equals 1. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to solve for cosine s. Like you did here, you subtracted the 4 from both sides. I'm going to subtract the 3/5 squared from both sides. So that's going to tell me that cosine squared s equals 1 minus 3/5 squared. And then what you're going to do, folks, honestly, is you're going to pick up the calculator and you're going to let your calculator do the heavy lifting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type this expression into the calculator. So what I'm going to do is clear this out. And I'm going to say 1 minus, open parentheses, alpha y equals, to get a fraction, 3/5 squared. Close parentheses squared. And that's going to tell me, if we look at it, the answer to that is 16/25. So that tells me that cosine squared s equals 16/25, kind of like x squared equals 9. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And I'm going to end up with cosine of s equals plus or minus 4/5. And again, I go to my calculator. I let my calculator do that second to get the square root. Arrow up, I can copy down, 4/5. Well, now here's the deal. It's a positive or it could be a negative. So where the quadrant 2 thing comes into play. Because if you think about it, remember our rule, quadrant 2, all seniors take calculus. Everything is positive here, only sine is positive there, tangent's positive there, cosine's positive there. I got a cosine in quadrant 2. That tells me that this guy is the negative. So I know that cosine of S is negative 4/5. So what that tells me is that this guy here is going to be negative 4/5. So now I need to repeat the process, those steps for the sine. So again, what I'm going to do is I know to figure sine t, I know cosine t. So we're going to go here. We got sine squared t plus cosine squared t equals 1. My pencil. I know that cosine of t is negative 12/13. So sine squared t plus negative 12/13 squared equals 1. So sine squared t equals 1 minus that negative 12/13 squared. I'm going to go to my calculator. I'm going to type this entire side in, and I'm just going to tell you when you do that, you're going to end up with sine squared t equals 25/169. Square roots of both sides. Sine t equals 5/13 plus or minus. Remember again, we're in quadrant 2. Quadrant 2, your sign is positive. That tells me that this guy is going to be the positive root. So sine of t is going to be 5/13. So sine of t is going to be 5/13. And now what we can do is we can use this in the calculator to figure out the answer. And the way we figure out the answer is we do parentheses negative alpha y equals enter 4/5. Open parentheses, negative 12/13. Minus, open parentheses, alpha y equals enter 3/5. Close parentheses, open parentheses, 5/13. Alpha y equals enter 5/13. Close parentheses. And I get 33/65. This guy equals 33 over 65, and that's my answer. So it is a lot of work. I'm not going to lie to you. Those ones take a lot of steps, a lot of practice. You're going to have to solve for both cosine and sine. It's going to be work. So if I do give this on a test, and you most likely will see it on a test, it's just going to be one of them. So you need to practice that. So again, I'd recommend you just try watching the video, trying a few of them on your own, talking to me. On Monday when I see you again, we're going to do a little bit more of the practice. We're going to take our test on Wednesday. Please let me know if you have any questions.